Hey everyone, this is Professor King. I just wanted to go over briefly what my plans are for Friday. As we move through the semester, I'll get more in detail videos, but I just wanted to get something in your hands for now for Friday. So just a heads up, I will be in the room for most of you on Friday. So there's one lab that I'm going to miss, and it seems like it's going to be the 11:15 lab. So I've talked to Jonathan, and he's fine with leading this lab, but I have a meeting I have to go to. For the rest of you, I'm going to be in there with you, so it's not really going to be that big of a deal. I'm likely to lead the first part of the labs. Now, one caveat to this is there are 2 8 o'clock labs and 2 9 o'clock labs, and I can't be in 2 places at once. So I need to get with all of you that are in 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock labs and decide which ones of you want me for the first half and which for the second half. But I'll send out an email about that probably tomorrow so you all can let me know. But basically, here's the rundown for Friday. On Friday is the first opportunity that we'll have to be in connection with the students on a one-on-one or semi-one-on-one level. Up until now, they will have had 2 classes with me where there's 500 of them in a given room, and that's just not ideal for anything. So this is the first time that they will have been hands-on. They're going to be frustrated with Pearson. That's okay. You can let them take that out on me. We'll commiserate together, and that's fine. But Pearson is a learning experience for all of us. Also, you've probably come across the fact that I've already given an assignment that's very vague to the students, and they don't like it. They don't like that I haven't told them exactly what to do and in what format to do things in. You guys are going to find that I give a lot of assignments that look like this in this class, where they're all open-ended, and I want them to think for themselves, and I want them to come up with their own solution. In the end, just so you know, they're ultimately competing against each other. So I will start to show products that are being produced by their peers in their class in my Wednesday lecture. So they're going to start to know the competition that's brewing between the labs and individuals. So if you get some great examples of work and you want to forward them to me, that would be awesome, because I want to show them, I want to showcase them, I want students to learn what they can do with Excel and what's possible. So we're starting with week 1 in a little bit different fashion than I had imagined, but we're starting with a macros workbook. So the workbook that's going to be downloaded for lab is macro enabled. So if you don't have macros enabled on your machine, you're going to need to make sure that you can do it. Now, I'm recording on my MacBook, so my commands and everything is going to look like Apple. I teach with either my MacBook or my PC. Does not matter to me which one you use, although I do require that somebody in the room know both. Well, that usually happens to be me. I speak both languages, so we're okay. But I'm going to record on my MacBook just because it's easier. But for this, I have a virtual machine running, so I can show you the Windows setup as well. The first thing we're going to cover in lab on Friday is getting to know everybody. So we're going to take roll. We're going to talk about teams. They need to be in teams by next week. And I want them in teams of 3 or 4. I don't care. You guys need to figure out how many people are in your section and what works. But ideally 3 or 4. I want them in teams of that for most of the semester. I want them to sit with those people, get to know them. We're going to have a team competition here towards the end of the semester. So we're going to do that. Everyone will have a piece of paper that I will give them that they will fold lengthwise, and they'll put their first name on so we can get to know their names. It's very important to me that you all learn the people in your sections and you get to know them, because this is going to be a very hands-on class. It's going to be a very cohesive class, hopefully, by the end. And this is the only chance these students have any chance of being known or recognized or feeling like they're a part of this class at all. When they're in big lecture with me, as you well know, they're all just going to get lost. Anyway, we're going to start with that, and then we're going to make sure that everybody has the right version of Excel on their computer. So there's a couple ways that we check this, and it's different for Windows versus Apple. This is a really important step because I need everybody to log into their Office 365 Excel account. If they don't, they're going to have less functionality than what we want for this class. I'm teaching this from an Office 365 perspective, and so I'm going to expect the students to have access to all of these functions and all these features. Now, the 10 of you likely have Office 365, but you likely have Excel 2019. I've asked that it not be pushed to these students, so some of them may have 19, some of them will probably have 16, but that shouldn't make any difference. Real quick, I'm going to show you how to check the Windows side of the machine to make sure that the people are logged into Office 365. So I'm going to go over here to my VirtualBox, if I can find it, and get my VirtualBox. So here is my Windows 10 account information for Excel. That's probably going to go off several times, guys. That's my email. I'm sorry. But I was just trying to get this video done. So this is Excel for Windows. What I've done here is I've gone to the File tab, just in any Excel workbook. It doesn't matter what it is. Go to the File tab, and I'm going to hit Account. When I hit Account, it should tell me that I'm on a subscription product. It should say Microsoft Office 365 Pro Plus. Now, some of them may say Office 365 Pro, depending on the student account. Fine. But I want to know this product belongs to their NetID. So if they don't have their NetID here at utk.edu or at vols.utk.edu, we have to figure it out. Second part, if they're running a Windows machine, they will have user information up here. It will be their full name. I need them to make sure their full name is here. I will no longer be accepting assignments that don't include their full name. So we have to figure out how to get their information on here. So most of the students will have Windows. Most of the students will look like this. The updates option, guys, is right here for products available for download. I recommend that all of the students hit this update options button. I'm going to post an announcement to make sure that all of this is done before next week, but these are the things we want to point out on Friday. So if they're in Windows, you're just going to hit this File tab, go to Account, and make sure that it looks like this with 365, this, that, and the other. So then, if they have a Mac computer or a Mac operating system, we're going to be inside Excel. We're going to go up here to Excel, and forgive me if I lose it here for a second. Excel, and we're going to go to the Excel menu. We're going to go to Preferences, and then we're going to hit General. And when I hit General, I should be able to scroll down here and change my username. The purpose of the username is for them to type in their name. That way, anytime they use a Microsoft Excel file, it's going to tell me that they touched it. This is paramount for me to be able to catch cheating and other sorts of things. So they need to make sure that their username here under Excel, Preferences, and then General is showing their username. So I don't think there's anything else from this that I want them to check on, but we're also going to make sure that they are using Office 365. I'm trying to remember how I figured that out. I may have to get back to you because I seem to have forgotten how to get there. But anyway, I'll get back to you on that. It might be Properties. Summary. No. So Summary is going to tell me their name in this as well. And that's coming straight from that other place where I just showed you in Excel Preferences. It's got to be in Preferences. I'm really sorry. I have it written down on my desk, but as you can tell, I'm not at my desk, so I can't figure out where it is. Anyway, I'll get back to you on how to figure out if it's Office 365, but we need to figure that out for the Mac as well as for Windows. So we'll start with that. We'll make sure everybody's logged in. We'll make sure everybody has some idea what's happening. Then what we're going to do is they're going to go out to Canvas and they're going to open this Chapter 1, Chapter 2 lab. I'm going to show you what's going to happen when I open it in a MacBook that's not developer enabled. Most of theirs are not going to be developer enabled, and that's good. So this is what's going to happen when they open it for the first time. So we're going to go to Open, and I'm going to open this lab solution, which is going to have the solutions in it when I'm finished talking you through what needs to happen here. So I'll have a solution file that I can also send you. Remember, this is going to be an XLSM workbook, not XLSX, but XLSM workbook because it has macros embedded in it. The first workbook that they're going to open, the very first tab as soon as this opens here, it's got a virtual machine running, so it's kind of spacey, but it'll get there in a second. When it opens, it's going to have 2 macro buttons on it. The purpose, again, is to show the students from the very get-go what we're going to be doing in Excel, where we're going to get to. I don't expect any student in this entire class to have even seen a macro button before, so it's possible that they're going to just look at us like we've lost our mind. I have no idea what is happening with my Microsoft Excel at this current moment. So let's see. What can I do? Nothing. I'm frozen. That's just awesome. Okay, here we go. So when I open a macro-enabled workbook for the first time, I likely get this message. Hopefully the students get this message. If they don't get it, it's something that we will deal with when we get to macros. But if the students don't get this, it means they're enabling all macros on their computer. We're not going to talk about how dangerous that is right now because they don't even know what those words mean, but we'll get to it. When they do this, and this pops up, they're going to want to hit enable macros. If they hit disable macros, this whole file is going to fall apart. It's not going to work. So they're going to want to hit enable macros. If they've already chosen disable, they'll have to close it and re-download it and reopen it because it just won't work. This one is pulling straight from OneDrive, which is what's taking it so long. So when the students download it, you're going to want to make sure that they download it fully to their desktop, save it, and open it from there, because otherwise, if they keep trying to open it from Canvas, it's going to do exactly what mine is doing. So make sure when you're working in it and when you're practicing, you download the files from Canvas and actually put them somewhere on your computer, because otherwise you're going to have this same lag that I have contacting the server for information. Nonsense situation. Now, again, if I was using my PC, we wouldn't do this because it's saved on my PC, but y'all know how this works. So now we wait. Like I said, the goal of this lab is just to introduce students. If you have talked to any students about their Chapter 1, Chapter 2 homework, you likely understand that it was all about absolute referencing and relative referencing with a few formulas thrown in there. So those are the things that we're going to cover. We're going to cover them briefly in this lab. What I mean by briefly is we're going to sort of introduce this one, and we may walk through this one together this very first week. But normally in lab, what's going to happen is you're going to present a business problem. You're going to give the students a few minutes to work on it, work through it. We're going to walk around the room. We're going to help them as they work through the process, because without the hands-on and the one-on-one help, they're never going to be able to get through it. If they just watch you do it, it looks incredibly easy, and you guys know this from your classes. You know that watching me do this is never going to help anybody. Watching you do it isn't going to help anybody either. But again, this is the first lab, so we might just let them work on it. So we have two macro buttons here. One says let's get started, show me the worksheets. The other one says start over, delete, and hide the worksheets. So the first button you have to push, because there are no other worksheets, is let's get started, show me the worksheets. When that happens, these two worksheets appear, two tabs appear at the bottom of the screen. When I assigned their homework, I called them tabs. Call them sheets. I don't care what you call them. There are tabs up here and tabs down here. Tab is the technical word from Tableau and Power BI. So I just made a mistake in my assignment, but try not to throw me under the bus. Chapter 1 tips. This is basically just a workbook saying Savannah is a waitress. She wants to be able to track the tips she makes every night that she serves. She wants to be able to tell how much she's paying to a bartender and the assistants in her tip out, as well as how much she makes. So basically this is saying, please calculate the tips that she owes other people, how much she's going to make in the final column based on these customers and what they've tipped her. Please format the worksheet in a way that it shows percentages and dollars in the correct formats. It says for formatting instructions, please see the tip instruction sheet, which doesn't exist. So I'll get that out of there before I load this up online. So those tip instruction sheets don't exist. These are the only tabs that are available in this workbook. So I used to leave them in there so that they could go through, but I've decided not to do that anymore, and we're going to walk through it together. So this is what I mean when I say I'm going to present you with a problem and not enough information to really get me anywhere. So what I need to do is figure out how I'm going to work through this situation. It's going to take them a minute to figure out how to get all the way around this workbook. Now, this is going to seem very easy to you. This one is very easy compared to the other ones that we're going to do. So let's take a look at what's going to happen. So this section right here, E through H, is going to be the tip rates for each of these different people that Savannah has to tip out. So this is going to be total received. Total tip received is equal to whatever is in column D. So the total received is in column D, and then I can grab this green box, this fill handle, and drag it down like that. Or I can just double click on this green fill handle. Double clicking on the green fill handle, guys, just so you know, the only reason that it works is because there's information to the left-hand side. Double clicking on the fill handle is going to fill in whatever I did, copy it down, as long as there's data to the left-hand side. As soon as it reaches a blank row, it will stop. I'm telling you this because I don't know if you know that that's what's happening, but I want you to understand what is happening when I push all of these buttons and I tell the students to do the same. It's going to be very important when you're answering questions. So make sure that you understand. I can put this in here. This formula equals D7. That's a relative reference. It's referencing D7. I can click and I can drag it down. It will do the same thing, or I can double click and send it all the way down. So that's the total tip that I've received. The bartender, what rate does the bartender get based on my drinks? So the bartender gets a 13% tip based on the total drink order for each customer. So the bartender, we type in equals to start a formula here. The bartender is going to get the total for the drinks times hold on. This just wants the tip rates. Bartenders get 13% of drinks. Bartenders get 13% of drinks. I can double click that fill handle and push it down. I can also click on this percent button over here and tell it 13%. Food assistants get what percentage of the food? They get 1.75%, which is 0.0175% of the food. So they get 1.75% of the food ordered, which will be 0.0175. Hit the percent button. That says 2%. To make it say 1.5, you're just going to hit the increase decimal, 2 decimal places to make it say 1.75. They also get 2% of the drink order. That's 0.02. I'll hit enter. Copy that all the way down, and while it's highlighted, hit percent until it 2% of the drink order. So this says assistant food, assistant drink, bartender. What percentage are they getting? So here, what I would want to do is take this bartender and put drink. So I remember in my spreadsheet that the bartender is going to get a percentage of the drink. Now, I can't see that, so I have a couple of options. I can either wrap the text in this cell, or I can just make it wider. To make it wider, I go and hover between F and G and drag it out, or I can go between F and G and simply double click. If I double click, it's going to make it exactly the right length that it wants to be for this particular thing. Now, does that necessarily have to happen? No, but I'm trying to make my spreadsheet make the most sense. So what tip amounts are actually going to happen? So these are the dollar amounts that I want. So I'm going to take this dollar amount category and I'm going to make it a different color. I'm going to go up and I'm going to say I want this to be filled in a light gray background. This is what actually I'm going to have to either pay out or my net tip is going to be in. So I'm going to change the color of this so it doesn't look like the rest of the sheet to me. So the bartender is going to get the total for the drinks times the percentage that the bartender is going to make. So this is just cell referencing. This is a formula, not a function. And we're going to make a big deal about the fact this is a formula, not a function. A formula in Excel is anytime I just reference cells and do mathematical operations on them. A function will be when I do things like sum, count, if, VLOOKUP, things like that. Anything that has a name is a function. These are formulas. So I'll hit enter. And then I can again double click because I have these over here, double click to calculate the tip amounts that have to go to the bartender. Well, I know that these are actual tip amounts. These are in dollars or counting format. So while they're highlighted, I'll hit dollars and we'll be good to go there. Now the assistant gets 2 pieces. So the assistant, we're going to type equals. The assistant is going to get, we're going to open parentheses and say they get 1.75% times the food total. So G7 times B7, we're going to close the parentheses, and then we're going to say plus, they also get, open parentheses, 2% times the drink total. And we're going to close the parentheses. So you can see, because I still have this highlighted, that I have G7, which is blue, times B7, so the assistant food times the food, plus the assistant drink total times the drinks. So that'll tell me how much I owe my server assistant. Copy that down, again, make it into dollars. So the net tip that Savannah makes is, of course, you all can figure this out, going to be equal to her $6, the total received, minus what she owes the bartender, minus what she owes the assistant. And mine says false, which just means that I typed something wrong. E7, how about minus I7 minus J7, $4.38. If I want to check that, I can highlight these three and notice way down here in my status bar, I get a sum of $6, which is in fact the total tip left. That tells me that my formula is correct. And I can copy and paste this down. This is really great, but perhaps I want to know the total tips that I made for the day. So in this very cell at the very bottom, to finish up, we're going to type equals sum. We're going to do our first function, and our sum is going to be of this whole column. So you're going to have the sum of K7 through K26. You can type that with the colons. You can click and drag. You can control shift up. I don't care what you do. Just close the parentheses and hit enter. You should get $183.65 that Savannah gets for her total tips for March 18th. Now, we're going to do different things with this. You can do a whole lot of things that happen when you're making this workbook. You can make sure that all of these over here in the customer subtotal and tip are also in dollars. That's very important. Anytime I have a dollar, I want it to be in an accounting format or a dollar format. I don't care which one you use in this particular case. But make sure that they understand things need to be formatted appropriately, and they can change headings, they can change formatting, they can change anything to make this workbook look the way they want it to. So this is, in essence, our inputs over here. And then all of this will calculate based on the inputs. So I'm going to highlight this in orange, and I'm going to go over here and block this off. I'm going to say a thick outside border, and I'm going to say merge and center, and I'm going to call this my input area. Because that means anytime that Savannah wants to calculate her tips, all she need do is enter the food total, the drink total, and the tip that they left, and the rest of this will calculate based on the inputs for here. So we talk about spreadsheet design, we talk about input areas and output areas. This is important. So when you're finished with this, this is what I would like for it to look like for the students. Now, one other thing that you can show them is you can show them the formulas. So right now it shows all the numbers, but you can push Control tilde. The tilde, just so you know, is that funky shape right next to the 1 on your keyboard. You can push Control tilde, and it is a Mac command or a PC command. If you push it, it is going to show anytime there is a formula in any of these cells. So now it doesn't show numbers, it shows the formula. So it's an interesting thing for the students to look at. But when you turn it in or when you give it to your boss, you don't want those formulas to show, so you just hit Control tilde again. Now, that's the end of that one. So the second tab that we're going to work on is called a car loan. So this is one of the things that we're going to do over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in BA 242, because these students need to learn, one, how do I calculate payments? How do I calculate amortization tables? How do I calculate all these different things? So you're going to find us doing loans and mortgage tables throughout the entire semester. We'll start our first one here. The purpose of this one is, again, the inputs and the outputs. So all of the outputs down here, and you're going to point this out to the students, all of the outputs in this area here, and we'll highlight it, let's see, gray, just to be consistent. Gray output areas are going to be dictated by the input areas. And I'll make the input area orange here again, just for consistency with the other one. I don't care what colors you do. Your students are going to do whatever colors you do, so make up your own color scheme. I don't care. Be yourself. If you're a red lab and you want the inputs to always be red, fine. I don't care. Do what you want to do. But this is what we're trying to get to. So this worksheet is going to do a couple of things. Use the worksheet to calculate the down payment, the monthly payment on car options you're considering purchasing. So we're going to try to buy cars that are in this price range. We're going to figure out how we do it. Please include today's date in the box, one that will update each time the worksheet opens. Just so you all know, this is the today formula. So here we're going to do equals today. The formula today is going to give today's date every time this worksheet is open, saved, printed. I think that's it. Open, saved, or printed, right? It's going to recalculate. Or if I manually force it to recalculate. It's not going to change. If I were to leave this open until tomorrow, it'll stay the same. The other formula that they've learned so far in date and time is now. So if I put now, if I say equals now, it's going to give me now, but it will give me, if I ask for a different number format, now will give me a date timestamp. So if I want this one will give me the time. Today will not. So if I do equals today, it's going to go back and it won't give me the time. Today does not include a time function, so it's just going to give me a 0. So if I do now, it'll give me the given time. If I don't, if I use today, it won't give me the time. Don't need the time for this one. This function is today. In the viability column, it says, use an if statement to determine if you can afford the car based on your budget. Note your budget is in the input box. It could change. So please display test drive if you can afford the car. If you can't afford the car, please show out of price range. So first, let's figure out what the down payment is. The down payment here is calculated by a formula. Remember, a formula is two cells with mathematical operation between them. So the cost of the car times the down payment. Down payment is 5%. So $20,000 times 5% gives me the down payment. Now here's where it gets tricky. I can copy and paste this down, and you'll notice these numbers get all out of whack and really wonky really fast. I recommend that you do that for the students. You make the mistakes. You'll find that I make a ton of mistakes when I'm trying to teach. I do it on purpose. So $20,000 times 5%, that down payment is $1,000. That is 5% of $20,000. $812.50 is not 5% of $25,000. So if you double click on this $850, it'll show you what happened. It's now taken $25,000 times 3.25%. And you're like, oh, that's not what I wanted it to do. That tells me I needed an absolute reference on my down payment percentage to make it work. So I'm going to go back to this cell B12, go back up here to D4, and a couple things can happen. I can put dollar signs in front of D and in front of 4, which is what's going to happen, what's going to make it absolute reference. Or I can push F4 or function F4 depending on my machine. Windows machine, it's going to be F4. Mac, it's likely going to be function F4. And so once I do that, I can toggle between absolute, mixed, and relative referencing. So I recommend that you teach your students as many shortcuts as you can get them. Function F4 is one of my favorites. So function F4 is going to absolute reference that 5% cell, and then when I go and copy that down, I'm going to get the right answer. Monthly payment is a different formula altogether. That's equal to PMT for payment. And when I do equals PMT open parentheses, you'll notice that Excel gives me the arguments for this function. The arguments for this function are pretty straightforward. I have a rate, which is right here. I'm going to go ahead and say absolute reference, function F4, absolute reference, that rate, that is my APR, that is an annual percentage rate. That I'm looking at. And then my next one is number of payments. My number of payments per year is 12. I'll hit function F4 and absolute reference that. My present value of my loan. My present value of my loan is in essence the cost of the car minus my down payment. So here I'm going to say $20,000 minus $1,000. The cost of the car minus the down payment is the present value of the loan. The future value of the loan in BA 242 we will always assume is 0. It is an optional argument in this function, so we don't actually have to do anything with it. But we'll say it's 0. And the type is going to be beginning of the year annuity due or end of the year ordinary annuity. All of my accountants, you should know what those mean. Those are present value types. We'll use 0. In this class, we won't work with annuity due. We will only deal with regular annuities. So we're going to work with 0. It doesn't matter in this class which payment date I give them. They're going to work with 0. So when I hit enter, you'll notice that my payment is negative $1,937.38. This payment is negative because I owe somebody money. And Excel's trying to help me to tell me that I owe somebody money. So what I do, and what I recommend that you tell your students to do, is put a negative sign in front of the payment function. It will work almost anywhere you put it inside the function, but I preface almost because it won't work for all the functions, and I don't want them to spend their time figuring out where it does work and where it doesn't. Just remember to put it out in front because I want my payment to be in real dollars. I'll drag that down. Now, you probably think that monthly payment is outrageous, and I would agree with you, but we're going to double click on these and make sure that they're referencing the same place that we think that they should be, and they are. But here's the dilemma, and again, I made this mistake on purpose so that you would make it when you're teaching. This is an annual percentage rate. This 3.525% is the yearly rate, and I have monthly payments. So I have an error in my logic here. My payment, which is my rate, which is my first argument, my payment function, needs to be my rate divided by 12. My interest rate and my number of payments need to be in the same denomination. So if they're all yearly, they need to be all yearly. If they're all monthly, they need to be all monthly. And that's a very important part of the payment function. We need to start talking about it now, and we need to make sure that they understand it going forward. So when I divide that by 12, I'm going to hit undo so you can see it was 1937. When I divide it by 12, it goes to 1600, and you'll notice these go down. So now I have my annual percentage rate divided by 12. My number of payments, that was just my number of payments per year. So let's go back up to this. So what have I done? D5 divided by, oh, that says C12. I don't want to divide it by C12. I want to divide it by 12. And then my number of payments right now says 12. Well, that's not my total number of payments. My total number of payments is 12 times the number of years. So I made a couple of mistakes, right? I need to know that there are truly 60 payments. My present value is still the same, and my rate is still the same. Now we have a monthly payment that is what we would expect for a $20,000 car. These monthly payments are correct. So again, we need to make sure that we are dealing with the same denominations of numbers. So APR, we're going to divide by 12. That's annual rate divided by 12 because we have a monthly payment. When it asks for number of payments, it doesn't mean the number of payments per year. It means the number of payments in total. So again, I'm making these mistakes so that you will make them with your students when you're walking them through, because they need to learn the logic. That's the most important part of this. Lastly, we have the viability, and this is an if statement. This if statement says if, open parentheses, the first argument in an if statement is the logical test. If the payment amount is less than my budget, and my budget needs to be absolute reference because I'm going to change this budget as I grow and make more money. I can change the budget for my car. So is the monthly payment less than my budget? If it is less than my budget, I have said I want it to say, if I'd stop clicking off of it, that would be great. I've said I wanted to say test drive. You must put test drive in quotation marks. Again, Excel is a computer program. It only speaks computer. It doesn't speak English. It's really smart and really stupid all at the same time. So I have to tell it very specific things. If I want it to spit text back at me, I must put it in quotation marks. I have to be really careful with my spaces. If I put extra spaces in here, it's going to go wonky on me. So test drive, if that's not true, if the payment is more than my budget, I want it to say out of price range. So out of price range. So this takes care of if it's less than or if it's not less than my budget. I probably want it to say test drive even if it's equal to my budget, so we'll adjust. If C12 is less than or equal to my budget, say test drive. Otherwise, say out of my price range. And we'll copy this down. And you'll see anytime it gets over, it tells me it's out of my price range. So that's all there is to it for this. You're going to calculate some things. You're going to use a today function. You're going to use a payment function. You're going to use an if. It's not super complicated, but the purpose of this is, one, to show the things that we're going to get into, to show input areas and output areas, meaning I can change anything up here and it's going to flow through. So you should go and you should change. Well, what if I have a 6-year loan? That changes things. What if instead of a 5% down payment, I have 20% to put down? How much car can I afford now? Such things like that. So you're going to show them that changing the input cells changes this without having to do additional work. So that's the point. So again, we have this and we have this. If I go back and I hit this start over, delete and hide worksheets, one thing I will point out to you guys is you cannot undo a macro. If I hit this button, it's going to undo all of the work that I just did. All of the work that I just did is going to be gone. It's going to be deleted. It's going to take me back to the very beginning. Tell your students, unless they just want to keep practicing, not to hit this button or to save it as something else and then hit the button. If they hit the button, they cannot go back. They must start over. Cannot undo that macro. So make sure that you point that out to them. Hopefully, this helps and makes sense. And if you have any questions, please email me. I'm trying to get a better system together so that we can talk through what we need to do going forward. Hopefully, you guys have a chance to look through the slides. The slides are super helpful to the students. They're not really helpful in class, but they are helpful with the work. I also am going to try to get before Friday the solutions to the grader projects that the students have to do this weekend. So I expect there's going to be quite a bit of noise from the students about these first grader projects, but they'll get with the program and they'll figure it out. So it's a learning experience, but I'm going to try to get those solutions to you guys before the weekend so that when you're answering emails over the weekend, that starts to make sense. I'm not adjusting the schedule, so there's about to be a whole bunch of backlash from students when they realize that their grader projects are due on Sunday and they haven't yet started them. Well, they haven't yet started them, and that's on them, not on me, not on you. So they're going to have to work through these first couple via email. You're not to be slaves to them. Answer your email 2 or 3 times a day. Answer their questions, but don't be slaves to them. Do remember, however, they do have 2 assignments due on Sunday, and they are going to be freaking out. Remember, for the grader projects that are coming up on Sunday, they just have to get an 85 or better. If they get an 85 or better, I'm going to give them 100. And in the end, it's just a very small portion of their grade, so it doesn't really matter. If you get any flack from any students or anybody is rude to you, please let me know. I will deal with it appropriately. And if you have questions that you don't know how to answer, I'm happy to deal with those. I deal with email all day, every day. So if you feel like you have more than you can handle, please just let me know. I'm around and can help you with that. So if you have questions, please let me know. But hopefully that you found this helpful and we can work on this going forward. Thanks, guys.